Okay, so now we're recording. Okay, so I guess before I mute everybody, is there anything anybody would like to share about where you're at personally, or the communication about the way the energy is affecting you going into 2026, or anything you'd like me to kind of maybe talk about?
Okay. This is Carter. Really quickly, I have been through like massive upswings and downswings with this because I'm an empath like everybody else on the call. And I'm in New Orleans right now. And I feel like there's a tipping point. And so I kind of just woke up literally with the full moon, realizing, I can't do this anymore. So maybe if you can talk about the energies and how they're just so intense right now. It's debilitating. Yep. It's debilitating.
I agree.
and I'm going to leave it there. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, honey, you said it for, I think, everybody. Is there anybody else that wanted to share anything? I saw Joyce.
Jonathan. Yeah, I made it on, and I would like to agree with her, and I'm going through the same kind of craziness. Yeah, intense. Yeah. Intense.
This is Andrea, and I would like to just give y'all a heads up in New Orleans that I've been doing, Spirit has called me, and I have been doing a lot of grid work here. It started in June. So there is so much light hitting the city, so just hold on.
There's a lot shifting, and I mean it's a big deal, and what we're feeling is just this deep complexity of a multidimensional disintegration, and it's very intense. I mean, the biggest takeaway for all of this is really meant to take us into realize that there's no separation from anything or anyone anywhere on the planet, and that's okay. Well, is there anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute and then start to go into all of this. I was pulling up my chart, and I read a few people earlier that I sent out. I've got another group of astrology that I'm gonna send out to you guys when I send the link to this call. Oh, we're up to 14. Good. Okay. All right. I'm gonna mute. Okay. So, So welcome to the January 3rd Cancer new moon. Well, I'm sorry, not new moon, full moon. It's absolutely a full moon telecall. The energy is very intense. LaDonna just came on too. Good. Yes. So it's really a crazy time, and depending on the astrology that you've read, or just spiritual people that are plugged into the field, that are sharing their own perceptions of what's shifting and changing, and a lot of those people are just giving it from a heart-centered connection space that they don't even follow the astrology. They're going just purely on pure heart awareness, through the cosmic heart, and there's so much intensity with what we're doing going into this new. It really is. I've said this so many times. It's a constant death and rebirth process. We're never not in death in some shape, form, or fashion on a deep cellular level within ourselves. We're also going through death with regards to the collective groups that we participate in. We have death of things within our communities, states, nations, what have you, of old agreements that kept us stuck in very limiting or dark false realities. And all of those things have been really breaking down with Pluto and Capricorn since 2008. And again, the final Pluto in Capricorn was this last November when it finally came out, and it's over. Or was it October? I don't remember. The point is, Pluto is always death and destruction. It's transformational. It's, transcendence, but it's the deep, deep, deep stuff. Capricorn was all the structures, that made up, that always makes up everything in our perceived world and reality. And so when you have that much energy that's blowing those things apart, then it leaves this kind of it's almost like everything in our realities was just jello. And now that Pluto has been in Aquarius now, it's been working in and out of it the last couple of couple years back and forth, trying to get a footing for Aquarius, and that's going to be a 20-year journey. So for 20 years, we've got Pluto in the Aquarian world. So we've got airplanes. I think of Aquarius more as like the connectivity concept. They always talked about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius itself really imbues the idea of water. Again, I've said this before, it's technically functioning as an air sign within astrological meanings and understandings, but it really is more of a water bearer. And it's been talked about that as too, but the point is, can you imagine Pluto going into water and transformation through water? So that's one of the reasons Pam Gregory and different ones talk about there's going to be a lot of things happening with water, transformation of water, healing through water. Veda Austin talks about water and the human condition and the things we experience through water, the memory, cellular structure, all of these things changing. And because we are 70% water, the Earth is 70% water, it is the biggest element. Well, it's a couple elements together making the water. But it's a core function of who we are. And I think it's very telling that Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years on that. And so it's going to be transforming us on the collective level and our participation with, let's call it oceanic presence, because we are going into oceanic presence. The oceanic presence has been awakened much more deeply over the last 16 years because Neptune has been in Pisces, and it went in Aries a little bit this year. It's finishing up now in Pisces again at that last degree, and that it's going to finish up at the end of this month before going finally into Aries. Neptune represents the dreams, delusions. With everything else on Earth is polarity. So it's got the highest expression and it's got the lowest expression, depending on where you are in your own consciousness and your soul progression. Of course, if you're on this call, then you're consciously creating in a much, better. Not that there's better than or less than, but you're in higher creation and not lower function. Where some people are just really still stuck in, just very mundane, remedial life lessons. It's so sad when you look out there in the world and see where people are, and yet there's no judgment. It's just where people are. And again, I think it really behooves us to, no matter what we observe, situations, circumstances in our life, to know that each soul is exactly where it's supposed to be. Even the lost ones, there are yet 8 billion different versions of these things happening. And yet, everyone is still being affected, supposedly, by the planets. And Saturn is, of course, at the end of Pisces as well. Saturn is the structures. Pisces represents that part that is our connection to God, the way we perceive ourselves as God, the way we, go in on the deepest core level of awareness, I think. And So it's finishing up, Neptune and Pisces, or Neptune and Saturn together there before they end up, literally just, what are we, I think 6 weeks away from their conjunction. And when they come together, both of them will be in Aries, creating the new beginnings. I'll just say this. I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to it. Any of you who have your women, which is most of the people on the call, I think Mike's the only other guy that we've got on here at the moment. If you've had the childbirth experience, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Birth is messy. It's very transformational. It is, I'm just going on what people say, obviously, but what women have communicated and things I've read. But it really is a very difficult and profound experience. It also brings in a deep renewal. It brings in a connection between you and a child, or you and a creation. Let's just call it a creation, because all of us as humans have the capacity to birth things, ideas, concepts into existence. And that's really where the creative power comes from. It's those core bottom couple chakras. The first one is I am, I can be here. And once you heal that initial chakra, then you're really grounded here, and you can start creating from a space of pureness and wholeness, and not from a place of reaction. And so much of our creations are in reaction to the world, and that's what's shifting at its core, is how do we create from wholeness, from a place of complete pristine awareness. Let's just say pristine awareness in whatever we're doing in life at this particular moment of time. If you look at something that's in your life, you may ask yourself, if it's not, if you're having reactions, people are reacting to it, what have you, if there's some weird reaction, ask yourself if you've created whatever that is in pristine awareness. If it's creating reactions, if it's creating any other stuff, then chances are it's not your highest vibrational frequency of something you could create. And I think there's so many times when we are creating something, if you really go to the core of it, it's been created through a reaction to something else. And sometimes that's really hard for us to see. How do we create something through reaction? And really, reaction is part of the false matrix. That's part of what they've created for. And this has gone on for, millennia, because of the way that things have been set up through the distortion. I was actually reading something that someone else posted earlier. I'm going to send this out again when I send the link. Let me pull this up. And I've read this stuff before, but it just kind of reminded me. Okay. She talks about and of course these aren't the only four, but she talks about 4 black cubes, and she has sent a diagram with it. And it's like these cubes are placed in PowerPoints within the grid of the earth. And she talks about how they're feeding on human souls. And it really is very true. And I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to read through this because it really can give some of you that don't have an understanding of the way that energy works on the planet, it's going to really give you a different perspective. So, and Judith and I had talked about this stuff quite a bit years ago. I haven't really gone into it in a while with you, but okay. So she says, what if your emotions were never just yours? What if fear, guilt, worship, survival, stress were never accidents, but fuel? Okay, so sit with that for a minute. So she says, some ancient systems don't run on oil. They don't need money. They don't need machines the way you think. They run on the loosh. And I don't know how many of you have if you've worked with Judas, you've heard her talk about the loosh before. The loosh really, it's a term used for these bottom feeder lost entities, humans. I mean, it really covers a whole gamut of expression of people that just gave their soul away and they allow the dark to control them. And so she talks about, they run on the loosh. It's raw emotional charge. It's human soul energy. It's your light under pressure. And she says, there's whispers of the black 4 cube frequency anchors buried deep beneath the Earth's energetic grid. They're not physical buildings, but they're vibrational siphons tuned into specific emotional outputs. Now, the 4 she's talked about on here, there are obviously more around the planet, but once I list these with you, you're really you'll get it. So, number 1, she's got the Vatican. The whole concept of the Vatican point siphon, it's built on guilt, sin, confession, perpetual unworthiness, and that's a loop that teaches you that salvation has to be earned in some way, that you're less than. So if you think about all the people, especially in the Catholicism religions, they really give their power away on a spiritual level. And there's this whole unworthy thing. And this goes back for millennia. It's a really it's one of the most integral false overlays on the human template. The next one she has is Mecca. I never thought about that one necessarily that way, but she talks about endless ritual, endless circling, devotion without inner sovereignty, energy moving outward instead of inward. So that one is really kind of putting your energy into something that's a false creation, because you're constantly circling with something. You never can manifest anything. You're doing all these rituals, but nothing ever happens. You have devotion to something, but it's not coming from a place of just pure cosmic heart awareness. The next one she's got is Manhattan. Fear of money, fear of survival, scarcity consciousness, your life force is being traded for paper and time. That really is Western culture. I mean, it is amazing how many of us sell our souls for a dime or for an idea, for a concept, and it's vacuous, it's empty. And that is part of the inverted reality that we're in. It's really perfect that we're talking about this going into these energy shifts, because it lays a perfect groundwork for this. The next one she talks about as a portal is CERN. That's the Hadron Collider over in Switzerland. So she talks about artificial portals, forced openings, playing with creation without source, punching holes in fabric instead of remembering how to pass through naturally. So CERN really is a creation of, quote, science. It's the false inverted science, where they're attempting to use, and we did the same thing in Atlantis. We were using crystals. We were trying to think that we knew better than God. We weren't working with Source, God, whatever you want to call that to be, and we were very out of alignment. CERN is very much acting like what we did in Atlantis. Atlantis didn't end well. I don't think we're going to be on the same road as what happened to us in Atlantis. I do think that you have some people that their souls came back in this lifetime. They want to reopen that type of dynamic. I think they're allowed to play up to a certain point, but I do think that there's forces above them that go into a disintegration of those energy fields and the timelines and don't allow them to come forth through destruction. Because if they were really allowed to create as dark as they wanted to create, then the Earth would have been obliterated a long time ago. That's not what we came here to do. These are the last remnants, I think, of the lost souls that are trying to think that they're God, and they're going to create, they know better than God, they're going to create, some portal to the other side of the universe or the other side of consciousness. I mean, who knows what's in their brains and minds, but it's a false creation matrix. And they're really attempting to pull us into a black hole. Is what I feel is happening with it, but I really don't think it's going to be allowed to manifest. But what is interesting, though, and this is the important takeaway from all four of these things, and again, this is just a small explanation, or example of all of these types of these. It is kind of like a black cube frequency, and I was reading something else that came up even after that, and it talks about the black cubes really come from Saturn. Saturn really, in its darkest expression, creates structures through inversion. And that's the thing that we're attempting to clear and flip the reality back in its on its right side up, so we're not going through creations that suck our energy fields. But the rest of this, she's talking about, they don't need to feed on bodies. They feed on states of being. Fear empowers them. Guilt stabilizes them. Trauma anchors them. Blind worship sustains them. The systems they power are not human. They belong to beings that severed themselves from source long ago, intelligent, advanced, but empty. It's vacuous. So they siphon, they harvest, they farm emotion the way we farm cattle. The greatest trick convincing humanity that suffering is holy, fear is normal, and power lives outside of you. The light that remembers itself can't be harvested. The moment you reclaim your nervous system, your emotions, and your sovereignty, the feeding stops. That's why we're awakening. That's why the awakening is being resisted, because a human in their light is no longer a battery. Okay, that's a pretty powerful thing. I mean, Jude and I had already gone into a lot of that before, but I thought, for some of you that may not remember, when Judith has talked about some of these things, I've not really gone into it necessarily in that wording, but it really is perfect for now, because we've really come to a point where we're taking our sovereignty back. That, in its highest expression, is Neptune and Saturn meeting up in Aries. It's when you are no longer controlled or manipulated by any other belief system. Nothing. You totally unplug from the false matrix. You're in the world, but you're not of the world. That's why I think this particular moon, okay, I was wondering where I was going with all that, and here we are. So this moon is in Capricorn. It's at 13 degrees. 13 is a master number. It represents Christic awareness. That's not a mistake. The other part to this is that Venus is on the 12th degree, Mars is on the 14th degree on either side of the moon. So you've got all, those personal planets together. The moon is in opposition to it. So oppositions create tension, but it's the next most powerful connection without being in conjunction right next to it. So there's that. And of course, the moon is in Cancer, which is Cancer's representative hearth, home, the emotional body, the collective emotional body. It really represents on the macro scale the collective emotional human expression. So the fact that these personal planets are all together, it's like they've merged into they're sitting right on top of each other. Venus crosses over the sun, then Mars will cross over the sun, and then Mars and Venus meet up. I mean, this all happens within the next week. And so they're really in this powerful configuration. Mercury has just entered Capricorn on the 1st, 2 days ago. It's going to speed across, and it's going to try to catch up. It catches up to the sun by the 19th before going into Aquarius. Venus will cross over, the sun will cross over, then Mars will cross over. And so there's this energy where they've been traveling together, grounding things in Capricorn. Capricorn is very earthy. It gives us structure, stability, especially having Pluto having gone through it, for 16 years before. It's interesting that they're going to all be coming to the end of Capricorn and going into Aquarius, meeting up with Pluto then at the end of the year, at the end of this month. So within a month, they've all come together. Then they're going to go into transformation with Pluto. And before they do that, though, at the end of Capricorn, we're going to create the new moon at 28 degrees, which is the last degree of Capricorn, on the 18th in 2 weeks. Also, there is Estrella. Estrella is very health oriented. Vesta will have just crossed over on the 11th. The Pamela asteroid, believe it or not, is here, meeting at Venus at the end of the month, going into Aquarius together. Mercury is going to meet up with all that. So they're all going to be all this energy at 28, 29 degrees during the next moon. And so that's why this moon is really, really powerful point, because the next one is going to be at the end of Capricorn, and that's an anaretic degree. And it's a new moon, so you have new creations with new moons. But the fact that it's on the 28th degree, not the 29th. So I don't think it's going to be as anaretic. I mean, it's close to it. Anaretic, of course, the meaning of that is, things blow apart, they break apart. It's very transformative. Doesn't have to be bad. Again, nothing's good or bad, but it's a lot of energy. And the fact you've got all these personal planets there. The other part that I was just noticing with this today is I've talked about the Lilith aspect to all this. And everyone talks about Black Moon Lilith, what it means. They talk about it being lower sexual creation energy. And that's one aspect of it. I mean, you've got the Adam and Lilith and Eve story, but I mean, Lilith, is the one that was with Adam. She should have been with Adam. Then Eve comes along, got the apple, blah, blah, blah. So the highest expression of Lilith, though, really represents the divine feminine. And Adam walked away from the divine feminine creation. So of all the Liliths that are out there, there's 5 different Liliths. But oscillating Lilith is the main one. I've talked about that all year long. And the reason I bring it up now is that all those personal planets pass through the Lilith vortex over this last year. They are moving away from the Lilith vortex, but all the personal planets just went through that. So they all got activated with what I call the higher divine feminine energy. That was at the last degree of Capricorn, of Sagittarius at the end of December, just a week ago. And Mercury went through that point. Juno went through that point. So partnering and communication all got accessed by the highest divine feminine expression. Also at that point was a trine to the 3-eye Atlas interstellar object. Trines are the highest, most flowing energy. So all that energy, I feel like, got imbued into all of the personal planets that went through, but also because Mercury and Juno of partnering were sitting in that divine expression, they got cosmic miracle grow put on them before coming into Capricorn for this month. I think that's a big, big deal. The other thing that's happening that's coming through, one of the Lilith points is Waldemuth Lilith. And that is a hypothetical point. Not all astrologers talk about it or agree with it being there. What I have read on it as far as research, as far as its meaning, the way it functions, things like that, is that it really represents the darkest hidden aspects of whoever we've been that we've not faced with ourselves. And it really takes us into, I think, the core of the Lilith expression, or parts of ourselves that didn't get to express ourselves. And let me pull this up here. So it really represents dark moon, Lilith. Some people think of it as the second invisible moon of the earth. So think about that. If the moon represents all of our emotional body, individually and collectively, and it really affects us as far as the tides going up and down. So almost every one of you that came on today expressed how you just feel like there's this very intense energy, it's challenging energy. Part of that is going to be the way you're perceiving it, with all this energy hitting your emotional body. And you may feel just like you're coming out of your skin. Okay, whole planet's going through that. Now, the other part to that, this is a supermoon. It's the first supermoon of this year. The fact it's in Cancer is all about the emotional body. Imagine that this, and I mean, for each of us, obviously we're perceiving it a different way, but imagine that whatever's happening right now on the planet is meant to take you into your heart. And again, this is going to manifest itself in, completely unique ways for everyone, but we really have to create from the heart space. And we're no longer creating from the mind. Well, some people are still attempting to. But we have so many times things come up, and we have to be taken to the core of ourselves before we can really make that shift to create from the highest potentiality. And I think that's what is happening with this moon. The fact that Waldemuth Lilith is coming across it, they talk about it being the darkest aspects of the psyche, including unresolved trauma, hidden fears. Wherever it appears, it's an intense connection to the collective unconscious and profound spiritual struggles that have to be addressed. So I don't think that's a mistake. They talk about this being that it's not a confirmed celestial body, but it's a symbolic position that dives into the deepest corners of the psyche, revealing impulses, fears, buried truths, things we don't even want to admit to ourselves. Now, when we look at that and we go out into the world of form and we observe what's happening, if you just look at the news, I'm not going to go into any specifics necessarily. Well, one that would take you to your heart would be this nightclub fire in Switzerland. And I was reading someone that was talking about where the ley lines are on the planet, but also where the astrocartography lines are. And I forget which, it was Mars, maybe it was Mars and Pluto, I forget which ones, but there were a couple planets running over that area. There were also a couple of other planets that were running over Venezuela. And it's really not a mistake through the astrology of what got activated. Actually, I will go into Venezuela for 2 seconds just to say what a couple of the astrologers are pointing out. The United States chart is born with Cancer in our house and home. We've got a major Cancer expression. The same is true for Venezuela. And both charts got activated at those degrees. The same was true for that area in Switzerland. There's activation points, and we don't really understand them. We don't think about them necessarily. But as planets go over certain areas, or as other planets go over certain areas of the Earth, energy is made to create, how should I say this? Sometimes volatility, but it's transformational, like tectonic plate shifting energy. Those things happen to take whoever's in that area all the way to the core. When you have 40 people dying, 115, injured in a whole European area, Europe really functions kind of like the United States in a way. They each have their own country. They each have languages. They've got all these kinds of things, but they look at themselves as one body because of the European Union. And so the countries come together. They travel between the countries. I mean, we do the same thing, but we're traveling in between states. Our states have different identities to an extent, but not to the way that Europe does, because Europe is separate countries. They have different cultures. Well, not completely, but I mean, Germany's culture is not the French culture, is not Italian's culture, is not England's culture. Spain, so you've got a lot of cultural individuation within a smaller area of space. Whereas here, we've got states, but we're all part of the United States. So we take on a very similar ideology, well, except that our ideologies always split off into polarity that tries to keep us separated. But I mean, Andrea's talking about it doesn't have to be volatile. I mean, it really is softening to an extent. But here's the point to the volatility part. If you have people that are stuck and they don't know how to get out, sometimes you have to have a wake-up call that takes you into your heart. And that's the point of all of this. And it's also the point where you've got Venus and Mars and Mercury. Everything is coming together in crescendo in Capricorn right now to take us to our core. And it's the fact that this moon is in opposition to Cancer. That's the tie-in to the whole thing. The Waldom with Lilith is taking us to the darkest recesses of what we've not faced. That's happening individually, but it's also going to happen on the collective level. And no matter what you see happening out there, do not attach to politics. I've said this umpteen times before. It's really important. Know that every person's soul is coming here to do whatever it can to do. And they're creating friction. They're creating friction so that people step into their own power. I can't tell you what that's going to look like over time. The other thing that I noticed in the chart that was, I hadn't caught this lately, the Narcissus Centaur is at the end of Scorpio. Scorpio is all of those places where we've lied, where we've had, non-truth, where we've had lower sexual expression, all that stuff. Narcissus has been entering the 28th and 29th degree since right before Christmas. It's going to continually stay in the 28th, 29th degree for the next 2 weeks. What is pertinent about this is that Clotho of Fate, which is, it's the spinner of fate, comes across Narcissus. The fact that it's at the end of Scorpio makes me feel like that everyone that has that narcissistic part of the expression is going to really be running rampant for the next 2 to 3 weeks before it crosses into Sagittarius. But there's also, more importantly here, a huge transformation that's happening because oscillating Lilith, which represents the highest form of the Lilith expression, that really is the highest divine feminine, is coming back into Sagittarius on the 9th and 10th, just coming up in a week. It's going to be sitting at the 28th, 29th degree with Narcissus for a week and a half before going in. So that would tell me that the influences of narcissism and all these things are going to be bathed in the highest divine feminine expression. Coming along right after that, the moon will be back across its cycle, and on the 13th, it's going to be crossing through all of that. The moon will be involved, narcissistic, whatever is involved in it, cloth through a fate will have already crossed over it before going into Sagittarius. So we've got fated, narcissistic expression, but we've also got the highest divine expression coming in through Black Moon Lilith, through the actual oscillation pattern. So I think there's going to be a huge, I don't know what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be a transformation process of the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Interestingly enough, the Tesla asteroid is also attending all of that. The Tesla asteroid crosses over right before the Narcissus asteroid crosses over. Is that going to affect Elon Musk, Tesla company? I don't know. As some of you have mentioned about asteroids before, just because a named asteroid is there, does it mean that it does affect whatever's? I have no idea. And it goes back to this. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? The asteroids really represent the fragmentation of what got blown apart, and they're floating out there between Mars and Jupiter. There's over 2 million floating asteroids. Only 25,000 are named. The other thing that I was kind of taken in with it, this last week or so, I was thinking about most of those asteroids have been named by the International Astronomical Union. Most of them have names through Western culture. So naming is a vibrational frequency. So we may be feeling influences from asteroids that match our names of family, friends, whatever. It's an interesting thing to look to see if there's much emphasis that can be placed on those things. I will say in my own chart observations, asteroids, I think, do make a difference as far as representing a portion of the expression of who we are in our humanity at any given point. But I don't think that's a coincidence. Tesla just not only represents, though, the Tesla, vehicles, Elon Musk, but Nikola Tesla as an expression of what he was bringing forth and what he knew about real energy, free energy. The fact that is crossing over the Narcissus Centaur with all of this divine feminine expression at the end of Scorpio, I think a lot of secrets could come forth with regards to free energy being freed back up again. They're all going to go into to Sagittarius at the same time. They're all going to meet up with the trine to 3i Atlas, flowing energy, cosmic expression sitting on top of it all. I don't think that's a mistake. And I don't hear any other astrologers, addressing those types of things. Do the aspects to 3i Atlas matter? I would say that it does matter because of the fact that it's traveling flatly within the ecliptic of our universe. It's floating within the expression of the planets. If it's here as a cosmic messenger, I feel it makes a difference. Some people just individually may say, oh, I don't feel any different from it. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you're not opened up enough to it. But I do think that makes a difference. The other part to this, something else I saw with Lilith even just earlier today, Lilith comes in contact with Juno of partnering. So any partnering that the Walden Lilith takes us into would be all of the lower expressions, and that's at 3 and 4 degrees of Capricorn. And Mercury's just come across it. There's something about the fact that all these things are happening in Capricorn, and they're all going to come across Pholus, Quorar. Pholus blows up everything it touches. That's the Centaur, and so it may be taking people really deeply into core wounds. Quorar is really a more expensive cosmic awareness, one of the dwarf planets way on out, but they're traveling together. I don't think that's a mistake either. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on those, but the point is there's so many influences that are affecting us right now. Now, going into the moon 2 weeks from now, though, like I said, all those personal planets are all still on top of each other. And right after that, between, the 16th, well, starting with the 11th of Vesta, all the way in through the 24th and 5th, 23rd, all those planets are going to be at the beginning of Aquarius with Pluto. A lot of transformation is going to happen after the next moon. We're really going to be taken into our cores on a personal level because it's going to hit Venus, Mercury, Sun, Mars, all within a week. Vesta of House and Home is there. Estrella, which is healing, is the last one that will come in contact with it. That's not a coincidence. What is also not a coincidence is that all of that's happening at the exact opposition to 3i Atlas. So as the Sun in opposition to this full moon in Cancer creates that deep soul dive, I think that this 3i Atlas opposition is going to create cosmic deep diving. Every personal planet's right there within a week. It literally just about 2.5 weeks from now with Pluto. That's not a mistake, I don't think. What's also there? The Linden asteroid. Our teacher, well, several of us on the call, the Linden asteroid's in attendance there. I think that's interesting. The Pamela asteroid's in the middle of it. My other asteroids are coming up right behind it. They're not in it. And the Nikola Tesla asteroid. But I bring up the asteroids just, to really share with you, how interesting the depth is of the sky and how they affect us. And again, I really think they represent the remnants of who we have been over time through expression, but we're floating out there stuck in, or those parts of us anyway, are floating in between Mars and Jupiter in the asteroid belt. And I think all of that fragmentation, and I'm going to use these terms very purposely. I mean, Spirit gave them to me today. I was like, oh. So the asteroid field represents the representation of a fragmentation that took place after we blew ourselves apart, really with Atlantis and several other times. So it's also, when we're going into doing soul retrieval work, we can go into those areas and I think pull in parts of ourselves that have been missing or just floating out, floating out in space that we don't have awareness of. I mean, some people may say, oh, that's kind of out there. Well, I don't know. Is it? I really don't know. I mean, we are the stars are us. There's no separation. So all of these things, though, are leading us to a place, because it's personal planet stuff, transformational awareness, of who we are, how we express ourselves, what's happening. So that this moon that's being created is in Capricorn. So it's a grounding moon. Now this will be on the 18th in 2 weeks. I mean, huge energy with that. Venus is there, Mars is there, the Sun is there, Mercury is there, Estrella is there, Walden with Lilith is there. It really is a chance. I think that moon really is the reset for our new personal expression to come forth. And I mean, this one's obviously powerful because of what it's doing with Cancer, because it's opening our heart centers. But the next moon is what really, I think, seeds all of our future creations. And the other thing that is important to note with all of this stuff happening in 2 weeks is the fact that it's at the end of Capricorn. Saturn and Neptune will be finishing up those last parts of their travel within Pisces. It will be sextiling that energy. It's not trine energy, which is the highest flow, but sextiles give you workability. They really bring us opportunities for shifting and changing perception, the dream, reality. And again, they're at the end of Pisces, so it's the end of the old world, but they're moving forward after the last retrograde in that sign. And Neptune moves into Aries on the 26th, literally just like a week after that moon happens at the end of this month. So again, I didn't want to go too heavy into the astrology, but there's so much symbolism in it as far as what it's creating, the dynamics, the power structures. And once all those planets do move into, in Capricorn right now, they're all, here's something else to point out. All these personal planets, between now and, let's say, through the 23rd-ish, they're all squaring anything in Aries. They're going to come up with squares to Chiron, so they're going to be squaring our wounding. Squares are challenging aspects, but they ask us to look at whatever those energies bring up. But, let's see here. Yeah, Chiron is basically sitting on 22 degrees. So that's a master number, but it's in the later part of Aries. Eris is also there. Eris is discord, all those things. Eris is going to go direct on the 12th. That's not a mistake either. So we're going to have a lot of forward movement with, I think, discordant energy. Ceres is coming through. Ceres is kind of like a higher function of Venus. It's just gone, direct, just here. Well, it happened in December, but that's going to start moving forward. So all these things are going to go across Ceres, Slasia. Yeah. Let me see what other. Oh, so the other part was Uranus is at the end of Taurus. Uranus is major awakening kind of stuff. Those are, let's see, Taurus Scorpio is opposition. Taurus Capricorn is trining energy. Yeah. So that's really helping us move forward. It's really catapulting things. I think, assisting us. So let me see, what else was there? As far as the actual throughout Atlas placements, I don't think there's not a lot traveling in Leo, so it's not really, I think, affecting anything in that way. I think it goes over White Moon, Selena, and a couple of the other ones. But the biggest thing is that all of this is leading us up to the eclipses that are coming up in the middle of February, going into, let's see, February 17th is the first one. March 3rd is the second eclipse. As that's happening, this 3-eye Atlas trend, phenomena, whatever is happening with it, is slowly coming up to meet up with Jupiter in Cancer. And the fact that it's going to be in Cancer, and it's an interstellar cosmic awareness agent, whatever it is whatever value I think people are projecting onto it. But the fact it's only the third one that's happened since 2017, I think it is a big deal. And the fact that it comes in at the center of our Milky Way, at the galactic center, I think it is bringing galactic consciousness to us. I think it's functioning as the wake-up call for us. I mean, people that are really kind of out of it. But what it's doing as it enters Cancer, it's coming closer to Jupiter, which is retrograding. But it really is going to make Jupiter very expansive. And it's going to come alongside it when we go into that eclipse series. That's the one reason I think that these eclipses are going to be huge. The fact that you've got a cosmic awareness thing floating, within our solar system before it leaves. Well, I think that's actually where it leaves out. The other thing I've noticed when I've gone through and looked for pictures and maps, and also the points where they plot these comets coming in and out, especially the interstellars between Oumuamua and Borisov, and now this one with Atlas. It's almost like they come in, like they spiral in, like through a black hole, and they come in at a certain time and they leave the same way. There have been several things I've seen that's the graphic image that they give. And that really is, I think, very indicative of the fact that they come in for a certain time period and then leave. And the fact that it's doing, it's going to leave in Cancer, which is what we perceive home to be, individually and collectively. I think it's going to end there, but it's going to leave us in a good place right next to Jupiter with the eclipses. I really think that's going to be the sideways elevator, as Stephanie Azari used to call the eclipses. It's going to leave us in a completely new space. I mean, I can't make that, a much bigger, I think, expression. Cancer's in opposition to Capricorn too, so everything that we've grounded in Capricorn this month, I think, is going to really be activated in opposition to Cancer with Atlas at that time. And the other thing that's going to happen during that eclipse window is that Mercury's going to retrograde in Pisces. The Sun will be in Pisces. It's going to go across the North Node. Venus is going to go across the North Node. Mars is going to go across the North Node. They will all interact with retrograded Mercury. That is going to be a huge reset individually and collectively in the way that we express ourselves through Mercury retrograde, through Venus, what we value. It's going to go right over the retrograde, right after it goes retrograde. It's going to be right there on top of it. The Sun's going to go across it in retrograde. Pallas Athena goes across the Sun at that point. Pallas Athena goes across it. Pallas Athena is justice. The Nessus Centaur of abuse, it's also going to be going across that Mercury retrograde. I think there's going to be huge communication, and it's going to do it on the second eclipse. I don't think that's a coincidence. Venus will have just crossed both of them. So Venus meeting up with Nessus, I think you're going to have all sorts of communication with regards to secrets, things blowing open. I think that's when the stuff really blows open. The Sun, Mars going across it, and the fact that they've all gone across the North Node where we're going in the future, I don't think that's a mistake. All of that's also going to be activated by the trine to 3i Atlas on the other side of the trine. All of this is in Pisces. Pisces, again, it's our spiritual connection. It's how we see ourselves to God, to Source. It's deeply emotional. It's also the end of the zodiac, so it's kind of like finality. But all of that's happening on the eclipses at the last 2 weeks of February going into March. So whatever you're setting up now, I think it's going to be really activated with the eclipses in Pisces because of that whole configuration of what's happening. Also at that point, Saturn and Neptune will have already gone into Aries, and they have their conjunction on the 20th, right in the middle of the eclipse window. And I don't think that's not a coincidence. I think it's very structured to assist us in creating the new reality. Now, I will say this too, though. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we exist because the planets are moving in the sky around us? Do the planets make us do anything? No. There's a constant reciprocity going on between planetary movement and our individuation process, our awakening, our coming into our own sovereignty. That all of those things are happening as one dynamic, I feel like. I don't think that we should ever put responsibility of the planets, though, onto why things happen to us. They may show us, the patterns that are coming up or the energy that creates the patterns. At the end of the day, the hardest part, I think, for all of us to accept, and this is individually and collectively, if something's happening in the external world of form, we co-created it either consciously or unconsciously to some extent. We like to put ourselves in a separation of that and say, oh, well, that was somebody else. Yes and no. There's no separation. We may not have consciously co-created a distortion pattern that we're currently in, but we're still in participation of it because we're part of the oneness flow. The one thing I don't think we ever want to do is be in reaction to anything happening out there. We don't want to be in reaction. Now, the other part that's going to make these eclipses really powerful, the first one is a new moon solar eclipse. It's at 2850 Aquarius. So that's the last degree at the end of that 28th degree before even getting into 29. So it's going to be a mastery degree in Aquarius. Aquarius is, representing age of Aquarius. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I do think it's going to wake things up, and it's a new moon. So I think it's going to be really big new creations. The next one, though, that the full moon lunar eclipse is going to be at 1254, which is basically 13 degrees, like this particular moon, except it's going to be in Virgo. The sun will be in Pisces, creating the opposition point to that eclipse. That's why everything happening in Pisces with this eclipse window is a huge, profound shift. And it's also sitting on the 3-eye Atlas trine. So we're going to have cosmic awareness diving into that sun, which is creating that full moon lunar eclipse. Trines are positive energy. So I think that's really going to be the moment where we get blown open. Mercury retrograde, Venus, Mars, Sun, all of them right there with the North Node. And all that's happening is only like 5 degrees away from the North Node. The North Node is where we're going individually and collectively. With that second eclipse, I think everyone on the planet, depending on how conscious we are really going to have the capacity to step into major new creations. And you may not have to lift a finger to get there. I think it's going to happen for everybody in some shape, form, or fashion. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to still have some issues. I don't know what it looks like. Again, I'm not a professional astrologer. I can only tell you what's coming up here in this chart. So, yeah. Okay, so that's the astrology of stuff. Matter of fact, I'm going to step away just from the astrology to go in on a deeper level. You may say, well, does it get deeper than that? Well, yeah, it does. And we always go deeper with these things when we go into the meditations, for sure. But I guess you can go ahead and start to get comfortable if you haven't already done so. Most of you probably have already done all of that. But I mean, I'll talk, now probably we're coming up on 2 years. It'll be 2 years coming up in March that we've done these meditative telecalls. And I forgot to check something. So it's like in that time period, when I go into the meditation stuff, I mean, I've taken everyone into very core awareness on what's happening on a cellular, atomic, subatomic, molecular, what's happening in the blood, the bones, the skeletal system. We go in and we really rotor-root everything. And I mean, it's the way Judith taught me to go into all of this. It's also what Spirit takes me into, you know, when I get taken into the capacity of healing, you know, opening the permissions for all of us to go in on deep levels to shift and transcend places that keep us stuck in physicality, the emotional body, mental body, spiritual body, and of course the physical, but really to take us back to the etheric blueprint. And I think so many times, you know, we don't comprehend of who we are in relation to everything and everyone else. And I think that's the hard part sometimes. You know, if we're looking at the external world, we're trying to contemplate, you know, what is our connection to any of it? Can we affect change in any of it? You know, there's just so much I think that, you know, takes us into reflective states, I guess. And again, there's so much happening in the world that's going to continue to break apart. So, you know, we've talked about the astrology. So let's talk about what it looks like in form, but also deeper picture. So I mentioned going into the call earlier, everything is constantly going through death and rebirth. That's always been happening, but we're going into an exponentially expansive shift in the way we're going to perceive it, and also how it works in pure function. I think that this is going to really be the opening of the quantum awareness. Quanta is just that immediacy. Everything just is. It supersedes everything that we know from science. It supersedes anything that we have as an understanding in the old 3D reality. Quantum awareness, quantum computing, quantum healing, all of it, everything is just immediacy. And so I think that that's more or less what we're moving into as Neptune and Saturn. Neptune's the dream, Saturn is structure. If you look at it from a quantum awareness, the fact they're both going into Aries, I think that's opening up our capacity to go into quantum awareness and quantum healing on deep core levels. It really is the basis of all of that. The fact that Pluto is at the beginning of Aquarius still will be sextiling energy, so Pluto is going to work with transformation energy with us on all of that. I think that's really going to give us the basis for the transformation. These are slow-moving planets. I mean, Pluto's already moved up to a couple degrees, but it doesn't move very fast. It's a 248-year orbit. Neptune is going to be in Aries for 20 years. Saturn gets through in 2.5 to 3. So the structure of Saturn is going to be, as it composes the transformational energy with Neptune and Pluto, especially in this year. I mean, this year is really the initiation into the whole thing. As we feel into what that is gonna, I guess, our perception of what it feels like. I think some people are going to feel like they just can't exist. I think it's going to make the bodies feel, and of course it depends on where the soul progression is. But if people are really stuck in 3D density, and you've got all of this quantum energy hitting us, I mean, we've got solar flares hitting us like crazy. The light is it's beaming into us. I mean, it's awakening us. But for some people, if they're not doing the inner work to go along with it, I think it's going to just take people out. I think they'll manifest disease patterns very fast because it's radiating. And, when we're going through cosmic radiation through the sun, the great central sun, the great sun, so on and so forth, it's a major transformation. And I'm not even going to begin to say what that's going to look like in form. I do think that we are going to go into a lot of technological advances. My only caveat with that, with the med beds or things that may come out, anything that's built in scientific technology, please deeply question. Because if it goes back to things like with things in Atlantis, we will think that we know better, and yet we may create a bigger problem because we think we're solving something with technology. So, I mean, everybody's like, oh, the technology's going to be great. Yes and no. I do think we have had certain advances in certain ways. The other part, though, is that if we're creating something through a distortion of a shift of something we think is going to heal us, it may not take us in the correct direction. At the end of the day, everything is a frequency. I mean, we do know that. And if people are using, Royal Rife machines, all of the machines that create frequency healing and things like that, I'm not saying don't use them, don't trust them, but do take care that anything you're using from a technological standpoint, it can be undone. I'm still a very firm in my own heart. I feel like we can shift and transmute a lot of things energetically, and I think that's what we came here to do, more so than letting someone shift something for us through use of a machine or some other thing that creates frequency. There's still too much, I think, room for error when people are making a decision about applying frequencies to the body. I'm not saying that some people haven't made great strides. I think that's going to have to be really worked out over time before I would trust anything like that. So, again, I don't want to push too far ahead, but let's face it, all these technologies are here. They've created things 50 years in advance and don't roll them out until much later because they're too busy milking money on the disease patterns, of everyone in the medical fields. So I have no idea when that's going to really open up. I do think more and more things are coming up, but the main thing, I think, if we go back through all of our years together, either with Judith or just even these last couple of years on the phone together, I think the one thing that we have learned is that we are shifting our own fields, our own individual fields for our family, our friends, our communities. We're shifting that through consciousness. We're shifting it by placing laser sharp focus and awareness coming from the deepest core of our being. And that's really, I think, what we came here to do. I mean, we came here to go into the very core with Source and let Source work through us and with us to create the external world from within ourselves. And we're not projecting, a false reality. We're not creating anything that's feeding the false matrices, there's many of them, false timelines. All those things are falling away. And we do want to create in the highest potentiality. So I think the more we can stay heart-centered and just let that other stuff just fall, it doesn't matter. And I know it's really hard to not watch the news and project a value onto, oh, this is this and this is that. Please do not get caught up in whether this regime's doing this or that president's doing this or this group of politicians. Their souls are doing what they came here to do. They're creating friction for people on the planet to go into their own core and take power. Bottom line, that's the big macro picture of what's happening. The other part is that they're attempting to play out Bible prophecy. I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, I always heard as a kid, oh, the prophecy is going to be the king of the east and the king of the west are going to fight for this and blah blah blah. And they're going to divide their kingdoms, and well, that's kind of what's happening. Don't attach to any of it. Now, here's the other part to this. As the world continually shifts, and we take on these higher frequencies, the morphogenetic field, if you've not heard that term before, Diana, you may be new to that one, but I don't remember if Jude and I went into the morphogenetic field back then, because that was like 2012, I guess. Anyway, morphogenetic field, very simply, the field is morphing in constant symbiotic relationship to who we are as a collective consciousness. What we're putting into the field, we're creating. It's a very alive field, and it responds to us, and it has to reflect who we are, but it's doing it on a collective level. So again, 8 billion people have frequencies all over the map. Don't feed the energy, again, like that thing I read earlier. You don't want to feed the louche. Don't give them the fear. Don't give them any of that. One thing you're going to find, this is really taking us, Spirit was telling me this earlier today, these dynamics are taking every human being into pure spiritual mastery. And if you're stuck on a, quote, side, either left or right or Democrat, or it doesn't matter what it is. If you are in reaction to someone else's, what they're putting out, their own actions, things you can't control, if you're putting out a hate, that hate is yours. It's not theirs. That's what they want. It's the main reason that I read that beginning thing to you that talks about the way the energy fields are and what they're doing. They want the polarity. They want you to hate. And if you look at how many people in and around your own community that say they either hate Donald Trump or they hate Joe Biden, there's no space for a hate within yourself. All that's going to do is create an energy within you of something else you have to clear. And there's so much of a big picture dynamic that people are just missing. This really is spiritual mastery, at its highest potentiality on the planet. How can you stay centered and not be in reaction to what's going on out there? You can't fix anyone. You can't shift anyone. You can assist people in shifting, obviously, over time. I mean, as we do with these calls. I'm certainly a completely different person than I was when I started working with Jude 20 years ago. I think we all are. But if you look at just the general people around the world, they are so much easily pulled into the polarity reality, and they take things personally. We cannot afford to go into the personal story of any of the dynamics happening. What we have to know is that it's all meant as an exercise in going into our own mastery. And part of that power is sitting in and holding the highest vibrational possible and shifting the field so the field will no longer be able to take in or substantiate any of the false creation matrix. That's what's happening. I think it's happening on a very exponentially fast level. The frequencies that used to allow lower density humanity to flourish, I think that's what's dissolving. And it's a disintegration at our very core. And I don't know if I think if you've listened to me enough on these calls, you're probably into that. You probably perceive it. So big picture dynamic, I think that's what's happening right now. I think we're in the crucible. I think that we are in a cosmic fire. The other thing, a lot of people talk about Aries as fire. It's a fire sign. I think that we're in 2.5 to 3 years, patterns of Saturn, that the structures are going to be going through fire. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Again, don't project anything, like that. If you're very deep and sovereign in your own expression, I don't think that the external world can, do anything to take you out of that space. I mean, we're really going to be going into our own monk, that samadhi state. Imagine what it would be to walk around in the samadhi state all the time. For those of you that have not heard the term samadhi, basically it's just deep satsang, meditative state, where you're so immersed in oneness and in bliss that it doesn't matter what's happening around you. You're changing the frequency of everything. And that's really when we command sovereignty over our energy fields. And the higher you can go in frequency and maintain it without being pulled into the undertow, I think is really where we're going with it. And every person that does that raises the collective field frequency, and it shifts the morphogenic field very fast. So, okay. So on that note, let's go ahead and just go into some deep meditation, healing, and we're going to shift ourselves for any last remnants. Especially, with this moon in Cancer. I mean, it really is going to be very supportive for releasing. Full moons are releasing, not necessarily creating. Of course, I won't rehash the dynamics with the astrology when you've heard it. So, but it really is a very potent energy in which we can release, core parts of any emotional stuckness. You can also request it on behalf of loved ones, family members, city, state, governments, what have you. We can release it on behalf of the collective planet of the Earth. I mean, we really are coming into that mass, that level of mass shift. I also don't think it was a coincidence that this new Avatar movie has come out now. I've not seen it yet. I've heard stories about it. Some people say they always prefer the first one, or the second was okay, but some people like it as good. I mean, it's all over the map as far as what I've heard. But, a 3.5-hour immersion, again, into Avatar consciousness. I think the timing really is good for people to be able to go and, feel into that and what it means. I mean, huge movie, huge symbolism. Really talks about the connectedness of everything. I assume it's doing what the first movie did. Really, I think one of the most powerful movies to come out of Hollywood as far as, assisting to take people into like a big disclosure of cosmic expression. So, okay, so I don't think I'm not going to probably articulate just through the deep diving of, I probably won't mention the blood and all the different things, I do with the body. I think Diana's the only one on the call that hadn't had that. And of course, I mean, I think she's been in meditations with Jude where she'd go and just take us into the skin, the cells, the blood, the organs, the lymphatic system, all those things. Just know that our awareness is going to go to every micronic cell, at every atomic, subatomic level of the body. And everyone's been on the call, and we're already into all those things. And Diana, you worked with Jude enough that we're just going to take you in, and it's going to penetrate. I think, and again, I've said this too. Anytime we choose to participate in a call like this, or it doesn't matter what the participation is, there's already a soul agreement that you will take on the highest potential healing or transformation of energy that your soul is allowed to receive and participate in at that point of time. And it will be true for anyone that listens to this call. This is being recorded, and several of you go back and re-listen to the calls either once or twice, and it's like getting a whole nother session with it. And so sometimes it makes me wonder really just how much has happened on an internal shift for each of you. And of course, I don't sit and contemplate it because you are just where you are. I do think that because we constantly do it, though, as a repetitive attendance, we all are really co-creating the collective energy that we bring through with the group, with the call. And I think that's where the power comes from on a collective level. So let's just go in. We're just going to deep dive. And again, for each of you, you can feel into the energy just coming in through the sacral chakra. And it's just permeating the entirety of your 5-body system. We're just bringing ourselves in more coherence with the etheric blueprint and really activating the atom, chem, and body. It really is resetting the electrical structure and function. Everything's electrons. Some of you are going to go into immediate buzzing phenomena within your skin and your bones. I don't even have to take you into it anymore. You're already in the space where you're just in that zone. All that is just deeper embodiment. Each time we go in, it reinforces all of these new crystalline-based expressions. It's releasing all that carbon-based densification that we've carried for eons of time. since this particular moon is in Cancer, let's really focus on shifting everything within our own emotional bodies. Let's let this be a release of core healing that we never dreamed possible before, because what we release for ourselves, we release for the collective. The external world of form will shift just because we shift internally. Imagine that you're doing soul retrieval for any last leftover aspects of yourself that are floating out in the asteroid belts, or any part of yourself that you left out in some distant cosmic universal space, just through conscious awareness of placement of your attention somewhere else. Let's call back in every single micron of misused energy and attention outside of ourselves. as you let this deep quantum healing event happen for you, know that if you have times that come up where you feel like you're losing time, if you're sitting around in the day and all of a sudden you wake up and you think, where did the whole day go? You're going to have more and more moments like that. There's a continual breakdown of our concept of time, the way that we work with time. It's part of the continued disintegration of the old reality. Time will no longer control you the way it did. If you feel like there's an energy coming into your solar plexus, if you feel sick to your stomach, or you feel nauseous, or you feel just completely discombobulated, attempt to go sit in that and own it to be able to release it. Don't attach to it. But as we continually go deeper into clean out the core of the emotional body, which is what the next 2 weeks are going to do, you may have moments of time where it feels insurmountable. All that is are still parts of you that want to be cleared out. It's just another place of you that wants to be met. It's a continual release of the false matrix. As you continually step into wholeness, you can also release all of the places where you've given away part of your energy field to the entanglement. Entanglement with family, friends, business, whatever. What if we go in and ask permission to release and completely reset any and all karmic patterning and ancestral inheritance, to receive the grace of allowing all of that to be transmuted to the highest potentiality of where we are in the soul progression at this moment of time. And we can request it on behalf of any and everyone else in our sphere of expression as human. Multidimensionally, through all time periods and tables of everything we've ever existed in every lifetime.